So, unlike the previous session, I don't have any prizes to give out. I'm just going to tell you how to live your life. This talk is actually about a way of living your life that most people don't talk about. As you approach your career, you'll hear a lot about following your passion or doing something you love. I'm going to talk about something kind of different. I'm going to talk about following a principle. Finding a guiding principle for your work, something you believe is important and necessary and right, and using that to guide what you do. The three parts to this talk. I'm first going to talk about the principle that guides a lot of my work. I'm going to try to give you a taste of what comes out of that. And I'm going to talk about some other people that have lived this way, what their principles are, what they believe in. But these are all just examples to help you think about what you believe in and how you want to live your life. So to begin with me, ideas are very important to me. I think that bringing ideas into the world is one of the most important things that people do. And I think that great ideas in the form of great art, stories, inventions, scientific theories, these things take on lives of their own, which give meaning to our lives as people. So I think a lot about how people create ideas and how ideas grow. And in particular, what sorts of tools create a healthy environment for ideas to grow. And I've spent a lot of time over the years making creative tools, using creative tools, thinking about this a lot. And here's something I've come to believe. Creators need an immediate connection to what they're creating. So that's my principle. Creators need an immediate connection to what they create. And what I mean by that is, when you're making something, if you make a change or you make a decision, you need to see the effect of that immediately. There can't be a delay, and there can't be anything hidden. Creators have to be able to see what they're doing. So now I'm going to show you a series of cases where I noticed that that principle is violated, and I'll show you what I did about that. And then I'm going to talk about the larger context in which I do this work. So to begin with, let's think about coding. Here's how coding works. You type a bunch of code into a text editor, kind of imagining in your head what each line of code is going to do. And then you compile and run, and something comes out. So in this case, it's just JavaScript drawing to a canvas, and it draws this little scene with a tree. But if there's anything wrong with the scene, or if I want to make changes, if I have further ideas, I have to go back to the code. And I edit the code, compile and run, see what it looks like. Anything wrong, I go back to the code. Most of my time is spent working in the code, working in a text editor blindly, without an immediate connection to this thing, which is what I'm actually trying to make. So I feel this goes against this principle I have, that creators need an immediate connection to what they're making. So I tried to come up with a coding environment that I thought might be more in line with this principle I have. So what I have here is I've got this picture on this side and the code on this side. And this part draws the sky, and this draws the mountains, and this draws the tree. And when I make any change to the code, the picture changes immediately. So the code and the picture are always in sync. There's no compile and run. I just change things in the code, and I see things change in the picture. And now that we have this immediate connection between the code and the picture, we can start thinking about ways of changing the code other than typing. So for example, this number here is the length of the branches. If I want to control that number, I just point my mouse to it, hold down the control key, and I can dial it up and down. So I can see what it looks like for big branches or small branches, and I can kind of converge on what feels right to me artistically. And this works for any number of the code. I just point to it, dial it up and down. And some of these numbers here, I know what they do, but it's still kind of surprising to see them do it. And other ones are just completely surprising. So down here, I've got this for loop where I'm counting to 16. I'm putting 16 little pink blossoms on every branch. And I can turn that down for less blossom or turn it up for more. But look at what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of moving that number up and down around 20 or so. And it has this really interesting shimmering effect. It kind of looks like the wind is blowing through the tree. And the first time I saw this, I immediately started thinking about how I could use this effect for an animation. How would I ever have discovered that if I had to compile and run between every change? So much of art, so much of creation is discovery, and you can't discover anything if you can't see what you're doing. So I've shown you adjusting the code. Let's add some code. So I'd like to put a sun up here in the sky. So I go to the end of the draw sky function, and I want to fill a circle. So I start typing context fill circle, and as soon as I start typing, I get this autocomplete list of the different fill methods. So those are the different things I could type there: fill circle, fill rect, fill text. And as I move up and down this autocomplete list, I immediately see what each of them is doing. So I don't have to imagine what it would do from the method name. I don't have to look at the documentation. I just see it immediately. So I want the circle, and I'm going to adjust the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate, change the radius a bit. And that looks about right. Probably should be yellow. So I'm going to set the fill style, context fill style, same autocomplete as before. Choose fill style. Give me white by default. And I can change that color code the same way I change any number. Point to it, hit the control key, and I've got a color palette. So I can choose a nice yellow for my sun. Although the white was kind of interesting, I thought. Kind of didn't expect that, but with white, it now looks like the moon instead, right? Hey, look, it's nighttime. So having this immediate connection allows ideas to surface and develop in ways that would be impossible before. But there's still a problem here, I think, which is I've got this picture and I've got this code over here, and I have to maintain the mapping between the two in my head. So I've got all these lines of code, and just looking at this line, I don't immediately know what it does. So here's what I can do. I can hold down the Option key, my cursor changes to a magnifying glass, and now as I roll over each line of code, it's highlighting in the picture what's being drawn in that line. So if I want to know what's going on in this function, I just kind of roll down the function and see what highlights. So here I've got two calls to draw a mountain. I don't know which is which. Well, that's that mountain, and that's that mountain. And this has to work the other way, too, that if I see part of the picture, I need to know what code was responsible for drawing it. So I do the same thing. I hold down the Option key, and now as I move over each pixel of the picture, you'll see on the right it's jumping to the line of code that drew that pixel. So that drew the sky, and that drew the tree, that drew the blossom. So this is really important for maintaining that mapping, but it's also really useful just for navigating around. So, I want to make the sun a little bit bigger. So I jump there, make the sun a little bigger. I want to bring up the tree a little bit. So I jump there, bring up the tree a little bit. I want to bring up the mountains a little bit. So I jump there, bring up the mountains a little bit. And I can make these changes as quickly as I think of them. And that is so important to the creative process, to be able to try ideas as you think of them. If there's any delay in that feedback loop between thinking of something and seeing it and building on it, then there's this whole world of ideas which will just never be. These are thoughts that we can't think. Ideas are very important to me. And the thing about ideas is that ideas start small. Ideas start out tiny and weak and fragile. In order to develop and mature, ideas need an environment where the creator can nurture them, and kind of take care of them and feed them and shape their growth. And to me, that's what this principle of immediate connection is all about. And because ideas are so precious to me, when I see this principle violated, When I see ideas stillborn or stunted because the creator couldn't see what they're doing, I feel that's wrong. And not wrong in the sense of violating some UI guideline or going against some best practice, but wrong in a deeper sense than that. And I'll come back to this, but I want to show you another example of following this principle. So in this code here, there's no state. There's no persistent state, so there's no time, there's no interactivity. And I was thinking about how would we handle those aspects of coding in a way that's in line with this principle I have. Creators need an immediate connection. So what I have here is a little platform game. So here's my little guy. He can run around, he can jump, he can die. And the code for him is over here. So this code makes him run around, this makes him jump, this makes him collide with things. And down here, I've got some code for this little turtle. And the turtle's not doing much right now because I haven't finished writing his code, so I'm just going to do that right now. Say on each tick, his x position plus equals his direction times the time interval, 1/60th of a second, times some speed, which, I don't know, could be fast, could be slow. If it's negative, he walks backwards. And these are all ideas I can use for other enemies, but I think turtles are supposed to be slow. So that's a good speed for a turtle. And then up here, I've got some code that says when my guy collides with the turtle, he gets some y velocity, so he bounces into the air, and the turtle gets stomped. So that looks like that. And the turtle gets up after a bit. The problem is, I don't want the player to be able to get up here yet. I want the player to bounce off the turtle and go through this little passageway down here. And he'll have to go around and solve puzzles and whatnot to come back and get the star. So the turtle is too bouncy right now. Now, of course, I can just turn that down in the code, and now I can try it, but now it's not bouncy enough. And so while it's nice that I can kind of adjust the code while it's running, instead of having to stop and recompile and find my place again, I can't immediately see what I need to see, which is whether or not he can make that jump. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bounce off the turtle and pause the game. So I pause the game, and now there's this slider up here, which lets me rewind through time. And now I can rewind to back before I made the jump and change the code to make him less bouncy. And now when I move it forward, it's going to simulate forward using the same input controls, the same keyboard commands it recorded as before, but the new code. This is not good enough. I need to be able to see changes immediately. I need to be able to see immediately whether or not my bounciness is correct. None of this stuff. And if you have a process in time and you want to see changes immediately, you have to map time to space. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bounce off my turtle, pause the game, and now hit this button here, which shows my guy's trail. So now I can see where he's been. And when I rewind, this trail in front of him is where he's going to be. This is his future. And when I change the code, I change his future. So I can find exactly the value I need so that when I hit play, he slips right in there. So creators need to be able to see what they're doing. If you're designing something embedded in time, you need to be able to control time. You need to be able to see across time. Otherwise, you're designing blind.